In a quiet, remote village nestled in the heart of the forest, there was an ancient legend whispered through generations about the cursed mirror of Eziro, said to trap souls and reflect one's deepest desires and fears. Few dared speak its name aloud, but even fewer believed the old stories. That is, until Zina found it. Zina was a young woman, full of life and dreams, recently betrothed to Kelechi, the village warrior. Their love was as fierce as it was tender, the kind that made people believe in soulmates. One evening, while gathering herbs deep in the forest, Zina stumbled upon an abandoned shrine, hidden beneath ivy and vines. In the center stood a cracked, ornate mirror, its glass shimmering in the moonlight despite its age. Drawn by an unknown force, she approached the mirror, her fingers grazing the cold surface. As soon as she touched it, a chill ran down her spine. Suddenly, the reflection in the mirror shifted. Instead of her own face, she saw a woman pale, with hollow eyes filled with sorrow and pain. The woman's mouth moved, but no sound came out. Terrified, Zina pulled her hand away, but it was too late. The spirit had been awakened. That night, Zina couldn't sleep. Her dreams were plagued by visions of the woman in the mirror, her voice now clear in her mind. "Free me, please," the spirit whispered. The next day she confided in Kelechi, but he dismissed it as a bad dream. "It's just your mind playing tricks, my love," he said, wrapping his strong arms around her. But Zina knew something was wrong. The spirit had latched onto her, and every time she passed a mirror, its reflection would be there, watching, waiting. Days passed, and the spirit grew bolder, appearing not only in mirrors but in shadows, in whispers carried by the wind. Zina began to feel its presence everywhere. The spirit revealed its story: a woman named Nneka, who had once lived in the village centuries ago. Betrayed by her lover and cursed by the village witch, Nneka's soul had been bound to the mirror, trapped between life and death. She had been waiting for someone to set her free. As the spirit's presence grew, so did Zina's desperation. Her once bright eyes dulled with exhaustion, and her love for Kelechi was strained by the dark weight she carried. Kelechi, unable to understand what haunted her, grew distant, his frustration building. But Zina knew the only way to save herself, and perhaps even Nneka, was to face the spirit head-on. One stormy night, Zina returned to the shrine, the cursed mirror in hand. The winds howled through the trees, and thunder rumbled in the distance. She stood before the shrine, her reflection shimmering ominously in the cracked glass. "What do you want from me?" she cried, her voice breaking with both fear and defiance. The spirit appeared, her figure emerging from the mirror as if crossing between worlds. "I want what was stolen from me, my love, life, and freedom." Nneka's hollow eyes filled with tears, her sorrow wrapping around Zina like a cold mist. "You must perform the sacrifice." "Why should I do that?" Zina asked. "I don't even know who you are." The spirit looked at Zina. "I see you love him so much," the spirit said. "I have been separated from my love for centuries. I just want to see him again," the spirit persuaded. "Your soul is as pure as the moonstone. I know you can feel my pain, my suffering," the spirit said. Zina's heart pounded in her chest. She had heard of this sacrificing one's soul to release another. If she set Nneka free, she would take her place, trapped in the mirror for eternity. Yet she could feel the spirit's pain, the centuries of loneliness and betrayal that had bound her. Could she leave her own life, her love with Kelechi, to save this lost soul? As if summoned by fate, Kelechi ran as fast as he could through the forest. He appeared through the trees, his face pale with worry. He found himself in the ancient chamber. "Zina, what are you doing here?" he shouted over the storm. His eyes fell on the mirror, and for the first time he saw the spirit within. No, he rushed toward her, but the spirit's cold grip lashed out, stopping him in his tracks. "You must choose," Zina, Nneka whispered. Free me, please, don't let me die in this misery." Tears welled in Zina's eyes as she looked at Kelechi, her heart breaking. She had dreamed of a life with him, filled with love, children, and happiness. But she couldn't ignore the spirit's suffering. "I'm sorry," Zina whispered, her voice barely audible over the storm. She took a deep breath and pressed her hand against the mirror, feeling its cold surface pull at her very soul. In an instant, the storm ceased. Neka's figure shimmered and then dissolved into the air, her spirit finally free. The mirror cracked, shattering into 1,000 pieces at Zina's feet. But Zina remained. She looked at Kelechi, who stared back in horror. She was no longer the woman he knew. She was slowly transforming. The mirror's curse had taken its toll, her face now pale and her eyes filled with the same hollow sorrow that had once belonged to Neka. She was lifted up like a feather. "I love you," Zina whispered, her voice echoing as though from far away. And then, in a blink, she was gone, trapped in the shards of the broken mirror. Zina reached out to touch Kelechi, but their worlds were divided. She couldn't reach him as she was trapped in the mirror. Zina's body began to change completely. She screamed like a monster from the mirror. Kelechi watched in pain, regret, and longing for his loved one. Zina screamed and screamed till she disappeared. Kelechi dropped to his knees, holding the shattered pieces in his hands. His heart ached with unbearable pain, for he knew she was still there, watching him from within the glass, forever bound to the cursed fate she had chosen. Kelechi sat on the forest floor, clutching the shattered mirror pieces, his mind racing to comprehend the weight of what had just happened. Zina was gone, her warm touch, her laugh, her love, all trapped in the cursed remnants of the mirror that now lay lifeless in his hands. The silence of the forest was deafening, broken only by the occasional rustle of the wind through the trees. He stood, the shards slipping through his fingers, cutting into his skin, but the pain didn't matter. The physical hurt was nothing compared to the anguish that clawed at his chest. Zina had sacrificed everything, not just for Neka, but for the love she and Kelechi had shared, a love that had now turned into an unbearable void. Weeks passed, and Kelechi returned to the village, but he was not the same. The villagers noticed the change in him, his once lively spirit now hollow, his eyes constantly searching, as if hoping to catch a glimpse of Zina in every shadow or reflection. He avoided mirrors, knowing what they held, but the memories of her haunted him still, gnawing at his soul. One night, Kelechi found himself standing in front of the remains of the shrine again. The forest felt colder, darker, as if the very earth mourned with him. He held the largest shard of the broken mirror, its jagged edge catching the moonlight. Inside, he could see her Zina's face, pale and distant, trapped in the glass. "Zina," he whispered, his voice breaking. "I'm so sorry, I failed you." Her reflection didn't move at first, but then slowly, her eyes shifted to meet him. There was no malice, no blame, only sadness. She pressed her hand against the inside of the mirror's surface, as if trying to touch him through the barrier that now separated them. Kelechi felt a pang of desperation in his chest, and tears spilled down his cheeks. "I can't live without you," he said, his voice raw with emotion. "There must be a way to bring you back." Zina's lips moved, but no sound came through the shard. She looked at him, her expression full of sorrow, and pointed to something behind him. Kelechi turned, his breath catching in his throat. Standing at the edge of the clearing was the old village witch, shrouded in darkness, her eyes glowing faintly in the moonlight. Her presence was foreboding, but Kelechi was beyond fear. "You seek to undo the curse," the witch said in a voice that echoed like a whisper carried in the wind. "I'll do anything," Kelechi pleaded, his voice trembling. "Please, I just want her back." The witch stepped forward, her eyes narrowing as she examined the shard in his hand. The curse of the mirror cannot be undone by simple means. A life was given, and a soul must remain. But there is a way, if you are willing to pay the ultimate price. Kelechi's heart raced. What price? The witch's expression darkened. Immediately the witch disappeared. Kelechi was stunned.